Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, brought to you today by Josh Edison and Dr. M. Dentith. Hello, you're listening to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. I am Josh Edison, they are Dr. M. Dentith. Together, we are the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. I don't think I did that right.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
You're meant to be solving crime.
Yes. Anyway, it's July. It's not a news episode, and it's not a conspiracy theory masterpiece theatre episode. It's just an episode.
And what an episode it promises to be, because we're doing something slightly different this week.
Yes, we want to just take a bit of a survey of what's going on over at InfoWars and what's going on over at davidicke.com. For this episode, we have done absolutely no research whatsoever. We're just going to be logging onto these sites. Logging on, look at me, I sound like a bloody 50-year-old when I'm in fact 6 years away from that. We will be visiting these websites to see what the heck is going on. Now I don't know how... You kind of keep tabs on these from time to time, do you? Because I do not at all.
I don't like going to InfoWars, and I'm not entirely keen on davidicke.com, but I feel that we should probably look in to see exactly what they're saying. And given our general knowledge of conspiracy theories generally, this will either be the best episode of all time, because we'll be confronted with new and novel theories, or the most boring episode we've ever made. We go, oh, we've covered that. That's not new. No, that's the same old thing they usually talk about. Where's the content in this? So it either promises to be really good or truly awful. It's a binary situation.
Yes, it's kind of one of those reaction videos that YouTube's full of. It's going to be Josh and M react to Infowars.com and davidicke.com.
Now, talking about reaction, I believe that John Oliver did a segment on conspiracy theories on Last Week Tonight. Now, I actually haven't watched Last now for several years. For no particular reason, not because I don't like John Oliver, I don't like the show, I just got out of the habit of watching the episode every week. So I have not watched this episode. I'm also ever so slightly afraid when celebrities feel they want to talk about conspiracy theories and give advice to people about conspiracy theories. So I haven't watched it quite deliberately. Instead, Josh, I farmed that out to you.
And rightly so.
You were going to tell me whether I ought to watch it or whether it'll increase my already high level of anxiety at this time.
Yes, well, I mean, I don't think you need to watch it. I don't know, possibly we should say, wasn't it, I'm sure I remember several years ago now, we had sort of a run where every time we'd have a topic queued up to talk about one week, it would end up showing up in Last Week Tonight a couple of days before we recorded, and there was a fair amount of curse you, John Oliver. And now here he is, eating our lunch, stepping on our toes, muscling in on our turf.
Taking a woman?
Possibly. I don't know. My wife is out of the city at the moment, so who knows what she's up to.
Divorcing with John Oliver.
I assume that's the only rational explanation. No, so the episode itself, like, I don't think it would. I don't think it would drive you into paroxysms of rage, but there is a bit like obviously. It's a very pejorative gloss on the term conspiracy theory. I mean, they do make the point, yes, conspiracies do occur, but they're very specifically looking at the wackier ones, or in particular, I mean, the concern is the conspiracy theories that have the potential to be causing harm in the here and now, so sort of your anti-COVID ones and the sort of the QAnon ones that already seem to be motivating people to kill mob bosses and take guns into pizza places. So there was a bit of they're sort of talking about them to begin with, and they did the sort of, you know, big events require big explanations, and made the point which you've possibly come across but hadn't occurred to me, the fact that there are very few conspiracy theories around the attempted assassination of Ronald Reagan. Not none, we have talked about some before, but Reagan conspiracy theories are much less prominent than Kennedy ones, and the only difference seems to be that Kennedy died and Reagan didn't. The actual actions by the conspirators were the same, but because the Kennedy assassination succeeded and had a massive effect on the world, whereas the Reagan assassination attempt failed and didn't actually derail the course of history in any way. It doesn't have the conspiracy theories around it. But so in the he sort of talks about it a bit, and then gets to the so what should you do about it, and he offers three questions that he suggests a person might ask if they want to, if they're thinking about whether or not a conspiracy theory is worth believing in. Which reminded me of you remember The Wonderful World of Thinking for Yourself with you and Jose Barbosa? Yep. Many years ago on the Media 7 program, where you had your 4 questions. So I actually went back and found the clip of that, although when reading it I see you were more talking about not conspiracy theories in particular, more just sort of authorities, scientific sound bites in the news and knowing how you should critically evaluate those. So not exactly the same, but anyway. So he finishes with these 3 questions. The first one is there a rational non-conspiracy explanation? And by way of an example, sort of talked about how people would show up maps of 5G tower installations overlaid with maps of COVID outbreaks and showing the correlation, and then sort of saying, okay, so you could say that that 5G is causing COVID, or you could look at pretty much any map of things that show where there are lots of people and they all point to the same thing. So it's probably the explanation is simply that all of these are things that go where the people are, and the map's merely showing you where the people are. The next one, which kind of brushes up against the things you and Jose talked about, is has this been held up to scrutiny by experts? And going back to your points, you had a few things to say about so-called experts. Just because they're an expert, is the argument actually good? Are they an appropriate expert in a relevant field? Which sort of goes into that a little bit. He talks about the Plandemic documentary and I forget her name, but the woman who's sort of at the centre of that, who claims to be an expert but is somewhat iffy. And then the last question in here, I think, is possibly where your blood pressure may have risen a little bit. Because the final question he thinks you should ask before endorsing a conspiracy theory is, how plausible is this conspiracy as a practical matter? Which is certainly fair, but it leads into the whole conspiracies become less possible the more people are involved thing, and in particular that study, which I'm sure we've mentioned but we've never really looked into, the one where they sort of tried to came up with a mathematical equation for how long a conspiracy is likely to endure before being discovered based on the number of people involved in it, showing that the moon landing conspiracies would have broken down in 3.68 years and so on and so forth.
I'm well aware of that study.
Yes.
And I've criticised it in print.
Yeah, so I mean, he does sort of, which, I mean, I can see it's an attractive thing to say, being able to sort of put numbers on, to give some sort of quantitative analysis of how implausible a conspiracy theory is. I can see why it's an attractive thing to want to be able to say that, but yes. So I mean, that's where it
ignores the actual structure
yeah,
of conspiracies.
Yeah. But he does interestingly actually bring up a surprise birthday party as, if not an example, then certainly an analogy of a conspiracy theory, saying how it's, anyone who's tried to keep a surprise birthday party secret knows that someone's always going to tell Roxanne. Damn Roxanne.
Roxanne!
So I mean, as a piece of entertainment by a non-academic sort of, lay person to a lay audience, I thought it was fine, but I mean, you could certainly pick a bunch of technical holes in it if you were of a mind to.
I'd be quite curious to know where they got the surprise party stuff from, given it's mostly talked about in the philosophical literature, and maybe that means one of the researchers at Last Week Tonight has actually had a look at some of that literature. Maybe.
Who knows?
Maybe our work is being influential after all.
We can assume, I'm sure. So there we go. That's the little bit of introductory stuff. ripped from today's headlines. Shall we dive into David Icke and Alex Jones?
We've got a little bit of admin to do.
Oh, we do? What else do we have?
Well, I feel that basically one of us should look at Alex Jones.
Right.
And others should look at David Icke. Now, it seems unfair to just assign someone Alex Jones. Conversely, it seems really unfair to assign someone David Icke. So what I've done is I have written down a number, and you are going to guess whether it's even or odd.
I see.
If you guess correctly, you choose which site you take. If you guess incorrectly, your wife and children will be absolutely fine, and I will choose which site I go to, thus leaving you with the remainder. So I've written down this number, and I'm going to hold it up here. There's also other writing on the other side, but that's completely irrelevant. And you are now going to guess whether it's even or odd, and then I will reveal it, thus showing I'm not cheating, and we'll work out who decides which website to go to. So is it even or is it odd?
Well, this is too simple. All I need to do is deduce from what I know about you. Are you the sort of person who would put an odd or an even number on a piece of paper? Now, I know you're in Hamilton, and Hamilton is peopled entirely by venereal diseases. And no, I can't keep this up. Even.
Correct.
Okay, I want to go David Icke. I want to see what the Ikester's up to.
Then I will go Alex Jones. So after the chime, we shall join you with a discussion about what's going on at InfoWars.com and DavidIcke.com. So join us after this incredibly short break.
Okay, this is it, live as it happens, completely unscripted. So I'll start, shall I? I'm looking at davidicke.com. The first thing I see is a slightly disturbing picture of Boris Johnson in a quite fetching cerulean blue face mask holding up a pint in a bar that I have no idea how he intends to drink, given that he's wearing a face mask. But the caption is, "Tell them to shove it." It's a... Tell them to shove it or it will just get worse and worse. David Icke's .connector video cast. Please circulate to beat censorship. Well, I don't actually want to start clicking on videos or we'll be here all night. So I'm going to skip past the videos and just look at the articles. And you were talking about, is this going to be new stuff or is it going to be depressingly familiar? So far I'm seeing depressing familiarity. We have 5G induces coronaviruses. A new study models millimetre wave influence on DNA. As far as I'm aware, there is none. That's the whole point about it. It's non-ionising radiation. That's what that means. But frankly, it's long and detailed and has lots of quotes, but claims that the final thoughts are, this research is another crucial piece of the puzzle. We've known for a while that artificial EMF is causing great harm to us. We've also known for a while that 5G is extremely dangerous in many ways. Oh, okay. Including hijacking our sweat duct antennae, bombarding us with pulsed waves, more damaging than continuous wave radiation, amplifying DNA damage via VGCCs, I don't know what that is, promoting deep EMF penetration and having mutagenic and carcinogenic effects, being emitted from a phased array structure that's been used for crowd dispersal. This research is more evidence that we're being deliberately poisoned and that tales of space-jumping bat viruses from China are a red herring. So, I mean, I would like to know more about our sweat duct antennae, but so far so 5G causes coronavirus. I should look through the titles of the top videos on the page. Compulsory mask wearing is calculated psychological war on the population, the evidence. Fraud Trump says he would absolutely take COVID vaccine and urges the public to wear masks, brackets global agenda. He's playing his supporters like a stringed instrument. We are victims of the greatest crime in history.
Wait. Surely if you're going to talk about Trump playing an instrument, you want to make some kind of pun on trumpet.
Well, you'd think so. They really missed it. So, I mean, it is interesting, I guess, to see he is completely anti-establishment. I would have been interested to actually see what the site was saying a couple of months ago when Trump was very much anti-COVID. Although I suppose since David Icke is heavy on the beat of the elite pedophiles and the Jeffrey Epsteins, and Trump's connections to Epstein have always been fairly clear, I'm guessing he would be fairly consistently anti-Trump, but I just don't know.
Well, whilst you continue to look at davidicke.com, let me tell you about some groundbreaking, world-shattering news from InfoWars. Because, according to one of their lead stories, Joe Biden now criminal suspect in Ukraine investigation.
Is that new?
Well, let's find out. This is by Rex Jones. This is Alex Jones' son, who is now inheriting the mantle of InfoWars from his father. And, unfortunately it's a video report, so it doesn't really tell us much. It's just Joe Biden is under fire, and the heat just got turned up, Rex Jones reports. Unfortunately, all the text is former Vice President Joe Biden is now a criminal suspect in Ukraine in a case involving his son Hunter and Burisma Holdings, a major Ukrainian natural gas producer. Now, I'm going to see whether there is actually any mention of this outside of InfoWars whatsoever, or whether it's simply going to be Rex Jones reiterating things that have already been investigated and shown to be false in the past. So Hunter Biden, Burisma, and let's see what's the latest news. I mean, there is 6 days ago. There's news from CNN claiming that Russia is making a disinformation campaign once again about Hunter Biden. So it looks like it is the same old story, but is being waged basically in preparation for the election. So not really much of a story there whatsoever.
It certainly doesn't sound new in any way.
However, I do also have exciting... Oh, and here we go. It's another video. Doctor warns new COVID-19 vaccine is by one Dr. Carrie Majid, an internal medicine specialist who claims that the COVID-19 vaccine could be, let's stress that, could be a Trojan horse to patent humans as it will change your DNA. And if you buy now in their Christmas sale, you'll get double Patriot points, because apparently this video is more of an avenue to get people to buy Alex Jones's products than is an attempt to inform people about things. Are any of these stories actually going to be... No, that's another video. Connecticut State finds 90 false positives out of 144 coronavirus tests administered in mid-June. Many of those who received the false tests were nursing home contacts, and this is actually a written story, which is basically noting that the Department of Public Health in Connecticut has discovered that one of its state laboratories had a flawed testing system, which doesn't really suggest anything other than the fact that someone mucked up, and apparently this is now evidence that COVID-19 isn't a real virus. So basically, the Department of Public Health admitting that they've got a testing problem in Connecticut is now evidence that COVID-19 is not real.
Well, let's jump back to David Icke then. So I'd gone through the titles of the video ones. The lead text articles on the front page. The first one is about the fact that a central witness... Now, this is actually interesting for all the claims of anti-Semitism that get levelled against David Icke. So this article is about the fact that a central witness in the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, a woman named Maria Farmer, claims that she may have been motivated by the anti-Semitic attitudes she has long harboured to falsely accuse prominent Jews of sexual misconduct. And talks about, lists a whole bunch of anti-Semitic stuff this Maria Farmer woman has said. And so it's interesting. It's it's very anti-Semitism, this article, talking about, you know, how the nonsense that she's saying sounds like it could have come directly from the Protocols of the Elders of Zion and other classic anti-Semitic forgeries and screeds, but all of this and more come from the bigoted brain and malicious mouth of Maria Farmer, and the quotes they have are all about Jewish DNA being different, all the Jewish people I meet are pedophiles that run the world economy, and so on and so forth. So that's an interesting development. We have an article which claims that Lead Stories, which is an organisation that does Facebook for fact-checking, is in fact a, quote, partisan smear factory packed with CNN alumni. And that actually just links off to, who's RT.com? Is that the Russia Today?
That is Russia Today, yes.
An article from them basically saying that, yes, the supposed fact-checkers are actually highly partisan and ties to the CNN and the Democratic Party. And then the other main one on the front page that isn't a video is called The Great Reset Fraud. The image for it is a picture of Prince Charles with the words "cult operative promotes cult agenda, what synchronicity" on him. And frankly, I have no idea what this thing's talking about. Just a guy saying, oh, it's by Gareth Icke. Is that a son? Is that a...
It is indeed.
Okay.
It turns out that David Icke and Alex Jones are producing legacies.
Okay, so Icke Jr. says, like everyone, I'd love to live in a population-free world. I'd love to see human civilization strike a balance with nature, and at the risk of sounding like a naive idealist, I sincerely do believe that this is ultimately in our destiny. Doesn't actually say but one is pretty much implied. My personal experiences lead me to the conclusion that we have only failed to achieve this paradigm as a species due to the stubborn and cultural influence of oligarchism, which has managed to stubbornly sink its claws parasitically onto its host for a few too many generations, corrupting and perverting everything that dominates. It seems like there's not really anything going on there. He says the world is not good because we're controlled by these elite types. We need a great reset of capitalism. So, good for him, I guess.
Well, meanwhile, over at Alex Jones...
Oh, I've lost you. You there? You're frozen.
Recording would have been fine. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. There we go. Don't know what that little blip was.
I'm getting... Alright, I'm going to put a little clap in there to edit around that. So this article starts with, House Speaker and insufferable harpy Nancy Pelosi referred to COVID-19 as the Trump virus during an interview Tuesday, blaming the president for making the coronavirus pandemic, and they put in scare quotes, worse. So they're reporting on an interview that Nancy Pelosi did with Wolf Blitzer, where they're very angry that Pelosi is referring to COVID-19 as the Trump virus, because later on in the article, Pelosi's reference to COVID-19 as a Trump virus belies its true foreign origins, which President Trump calls attention to by referring to it as the Chinese virus. So basically, Trump's allowed to give COVID-19 another name, but Nancy Pelosi is not.
Right, well, now it's interesting actually, as I was sort of looking through here all the latest articles, the featured articles, and then as I was reading them I looked up, and at the top there's a little bar, so I'm on the featured news tab, but David Icke's website has featured news, world news, UK news, US news, EU news, and then a final topic which is called Nature of Reality. Ooh. I kind of feel like looking at to see what they've got under the nature of reality. Oh, and they're mostly articles as well. There's a couple of one video about the great forgetting, what David Icke has been talking about for decades, and now we enter the great remembering. There's one about child sex trafficking, Galactic Federation and reincarnation. That headline took a swerve, I have to say. But mostly they're articles, so let's have a look. First one, Indigenous elders share stories about star people living inside the earth. So it's a summary of Cherokee and Choctaw people talking. Oh no, sorry. This professor is Cherokee/Choctaw and has been researching the quote star people and collecting encounters between them and native Indians for many years. So claims that this is star people or possibly moon people who live inside the Earth, who are First Nations people in America, have apparently had lots of contact with. This one of the people being spoken to apparently lives near a military base, and when the interviewer asked them, has anyone asked them about UFOs, he replied, one of my niece's boys used to work at the base about 10 years ago. They employed about 100 civilians at the time. He said that one morning when he went to work and the base was closed, they told the workers to go home. When he reported for work the following day, one of his friends who was stationed there told him a UFO had landed the previous night. He said there was a place up there where the UFOs go underground. His nephew said it was guarded night and day. No one was allowed near the site, but he said his friend who has a high security clearance told him about it. He went on to explain how he thinks it's a place where the aliens and the military collaborate and where the aliens can go underground freely without us regular people seeing them. So there you go. Not just aliens, but underground aliens from the centre of the Earth.
The best kind of underground alien. Although, frankly, I prefer my cannibal humanoid underground dwellers, truth be told.
Well, in a perfect world, yes. So what do you got? What's Alex Jones got for us?
Well, so here's a headline. Communist Chinese propaganda video claims COVID was weaponized to beat Trump. Now, that headline somewhat suggests the bioweapon hypothesis that COVID-19 was generated in China as an attack against the West. Would you agree?
It certainly sounds like that. Or if not an attack specifically to kill people, then an attack to make Trump look bad by getting his people infected, yes?
Now, actually, it turns out that China Global Television Network, which is a Chinese state-run news outlet coming out of Beijing, has a video up which basically claims that COVID-19 is a test that populist leaders like Boris Johnson and President Trump have failed for the sheer fact that they've failed to do anything adequate to control the pandemic. So the video itself doesn't actually say that COVID-19 is a weapon. It simply says that certain leaders around the world have failed to react to the pandemic appropriately, and thus they've failed the test of being good leaders. Of course, obviously, this is a piece of propaganda designed to show that China's response to COVID-19 is appropriate, but at the same time, it definitely doesn't show that COVID-19 is a weapon. And also, it is true that populist leaders like your Viktor Orban, your Boris Johnson, and your Donald Trump really have failed the test of being able to control the pandemic.
Okay. I've got a couple of stories still from the Nature of Reality section up. Would you like to hear about the global expansion of AI surveillance? Would you like to hear about 2 children suing Google for allegedly collecting students' biometric data? Or would you like to hear about woman shares what her experience was like inside of the MK Ultra program?
Ooh, I want the first and the last, please.
Okay, we'll start with the global expansion of AI surveillance. I should point out that the hero image for this paper is a sort of a birth of man type thing with sort of a robot hand touching a human hand, and the caption, artificial intelligence summoning the demon. So it's I don't actually think it's that sexy, really. It's simply saying artificial intelligence technology is rapidly proliferating around the world. Does talking about slightly worrying things, the onset of deep fake videos that blur the line between truth and falsehood. Fair enough. Also advanced algorithms that can beat the best players in the world in multiplayer poker. And so it's basically just kind of talking about AI is all over the place, possibly even in places where you would not expect. AI surveillance technology, so I assume all your facial recognition and all of that stuff. China is a major driver of AI surveillance worldwide, talking about Huawei, Hikvision, Dahua and ZTE companies being full of that sort of stuff. China. Liberal democracies are major users of AI surveillance. So it really, unfortunately, for all the summoning the demon hype at the start, it's basically just saying countries are using AI a lot more and are using AI surveillance a lot more. And indeed, I see this paper that was originally taken from the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace website, who sound like one of your think tank types.
Yes, by using the word Carnegie there, they seem to be trading on something they're probably not.
No, it's from carnegieendowment.org, but anyway. Yes, you're probably right to be less interested in the two children suing Google for biometric data. It's a story from CNET. Apparently 2 children are suing Google for collecting their biometric data, including face templates and voice prints. Although again, this one is accompanied by a picture saying the Google monster must be broken up before there's no freedom left, with a picture of Sully from Monsters Inc. with Google circles in his eyes and the big Google going rah, and holding a medicine bottle of vitamin D3. I don't know what's going on there. But yes, okay. Woman shares what her experience was like inside of the MK Ultra program. So a bit of background. What MK Ultra was, designed to make people do things they wouldn't normally do while under mind control, blah blah blah. Basically says you can find this out from CIA's electronic reading room. Talks about there was apparently recently the History Channel aired a program called America's War on Drugs, which had a bit of stuff about that. I'm not seeing anything about a woman giving her experiences of what it was like in the MK Ultra program.
Are you saying you've just been hit with a clickbait headline?
I kind of think I have. MK Ultra, a bit about MK. Okay, there's a video. Right, there's a video. Oh no, okay, no, there's more. Right, so this was it's seeming most of these articles have been taken from other websites. So what I was reading on the David Icke site was sort of a bit of a summary, and when I click through to the actual link, there's actually quite a lot more. Dr. Colin A. Ross. No, he's the people who's been talking to them. So Dr. Ross is talking about, along with a woman called Kathy O'Brien, I suppose. Okay, let's just back up here. It's one of those things where you start reading a sentence and it goes in a slightly different direction. We have a quote from Dr. Ross saying, "I'm going to base what I have to say here on the motto of one of the great law enforcement officers of all time, which is Sergeant Joe Friday, and his motto was, just the facts, man, just the facts. So what I'm going to give you is just the facts, a little quick synopsis of absolutely documented, objective, real history of CIA military mind control experimentation. This for sure is just a declassified tiny tip of the iceberg, but it's definitely fact and it's definitely stranger than fiction." The sentence which caused me to pause was, "This quote above comes from Dr. Ross, giving a lecture alongside Kathy O'Brien, a supposed MK Ultra victim, and Roseanne Barr, a famous Hollywood actress and director who once said MK rules in Hollywood." Was not expecting that. But yes, so apparently Roseanne Barr and Kathy O'Brien have been touring, giving talks. Apparently, when you see some entertainers such as Miley Cyrus giving certain performances, it's not really them but an alter personality which exists inside of them that is triggered before the performance. They are hypnotized. That's why Roseanne Barr apparently said MK Ultra rules in Hollywood, because the stars you see performing are actually under mind control. Blah 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 blah. UFOs. Blah 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 blah. Stuff being done to people shortly after birth, doing horrible experiments on babies. It actually goes in all sorts of different directions that I was really not expecting. Not a lot of detail, just MK Ultra is bad and they do have horrible experiments and control people's minds.
Interesting. So I've just gone down a bit of a rabbit hole because one of the headlines on InfoWars.com is 5G induces coronavirus shocking scientific study. There's a video attached to it. So this is concerning an article called 5G Technology and Induction of Coronavirus in Skin Cells, which is published in the Journal of Biological Regulators and Homeostatic Agents, which does turn out to be a real journal. I've been checking on various websites to make sure it does actually exist and isn't some kind of made-up scam journal. And basically it's the claim that 5G radiation is able to manipulate cells, and those cells can then be used to construct coronaviruses out of them. And apparently it was published on June the 9th, 2020. I'm actually trying to see if I can access the university's website to see whether I can find whether this is an actual publication or whether someone has just made up a journal name and produced a publication that looks like it may have occurred in an academic journal. So whilst I'm doing that, Josh, maybe you might want to find us another exciting little story.
Okay, well, I've clicked over to just the world news section. Here's one: cult-owned Google search blacklists major conservative websites and new fascist censorship purge. Now this is another, it seems like most of the articles are actually just reposted from other sites. Can you guess what site that article came from, complaining about conservative websites being purged fascistly from Google?
I'm assuming it's The Guardian.
No.
Oh, is it a Marxist journal by some chance?
No, it's a very more of a conservative one, I think, that's complaining about its brethren being purged by the fascists.
Is it Breitbart.com?
No, it's complaining about the fact that Breitbart, The Daily Caller, InfoWars, Human Events and Red State have all been blacklisted on Google.
Who's it by?
It's Prison Planet.
Oh,
Good old Prison Planet.
Joseph Watson's version of InfoWars.
So yes, it's an interesting bedfellows there for him and Icke. Shall I do another? Let's go to US news. What does Icke think is happening in America? Seen that one. Yeah, okay, so apparently the federal coup to overthrow the states and nix the 10th Amendment is underway. I don't actually know which one the 10th Amendment is. That's not one of the A-list amendments, unfortunately. But so this is this actually appears to be in reaction to the whole Department of Homeland Security. Here we go. The 10th Amendment affirms the sovereignty of the states and the citizenry, so it's the sort of the states' rights one, I guess. But this is talking about the fact of the Department of Homeland Security people going into cities in the states at the moment and pepper spraying. Did you see the dude getting beaten with the stick and not flinching at all?
Yeah.
No, it's been going around the internet for the last couple of days. Some ex-Navy dude showed up to talk to these guys in Portland and basically wanted to say, you guys swore an oath to the Constitution or whatever it is, and you need to think about what you're doing and uphold your oath and so on. And stands there as this dude runs up and whacks him a good 3 or more times, just belts him on the arm a couple of times and then once in the leg, and the dude just doesn't flinch. He doesn't move a muscle, and it's not until somebody sprays him with pepper spray that he then backs off, flipping them off the entire time. Turned out he did actually break a bunch of bones in his hand, but most impressive. Him and the naked woman. Surely you heard about the naked woman?
Oh, with sitting in front of the police,
doing yoga and all sorts of other stuff. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah, so it's basically talking about what's been going on in Portland and then other places, and this is the Trump administration. So again, more anti-Trump, an anti-Trump gloss on things. But basically saying yes, this is a coup to take over the entire country, and it goes on and on and on and on. In fact, this does actually appear to be a homegrown one, not linked to from somewhere else. So there you go.
Well, Josh.
So where'd you get to?
I've found the journal's homepage, and I found the issue of the journal this particular paper is meant to appear in, and it does not seem to appear in the... Suddenly, let's say it doesn't seem to appear in the issue it's meant to be in, but actually it seems it's been given the wrong date, because indeed there is a paper called 5G Technology and Induction of Coronavirus in Skin Cells published in this particular journal, which seems to have a fairly normal set of publications otherwise. And yes, indeed, there is an abstract here, which ends with 5G millimeter waves could be good candidates for applying and constructing virus-like structures such as coronaviruses, COVID-19, within cells. So this is indeed a published paper in an academic journal. I should point out, it's not a peer-reviewed paper, it's an editorial. Now, editorials don't tend to have gone through review. They tend to be papers that have been solicited by people in the editorial team. So that's a little curious. I'll be quite interested to see if there's any academic reaction to this particular paper, because it does seem just ever so slightly odd.
Now, I think we're brushing up against the usual amount of time we spend recording an episode, and I do worry for our respective mental well-beings if we carry on much further down this rabbit hole. Should we do one more each, and then call it a day? So the next one I clicked on in the I think let's go out of the US. Let's go to the EU. What's going on here? Oh, it's just going to be a boring thing about how wearing face masks is a global fascist conspiracy. What have we got? COVID, don't wear masks. 5G in Denmark. Oh, historic Notre Dame. Okay, are we still going on Notre Dame? Oh, okay. Apparently there's been also a fire at Nantes' 15th century Gothic cathedral. And apparently, according to, who do they get this from? Sky News? Oh no, the article about the fire is from Sky News, but this particular one from Gareth Icke is suggesting the fact that because we've had 2 fires in cathedrals within the space of a year. When was Notre Dame Cathedral fire? That was last year, wasn't it?
It was, yes.
So apparently, it has a photo of this cathedral on fire with the caption, I'm not a Christian or follower of any religion, but there's a war on Christianity. So apparently 2 fires in cathedrals, and that's a war on Christianity, folks. Over to you.
Okay, well, we've got a few bits and bobs here, but I think the one which is probably the most interesting is Biden says he wishes schools would teach about Islamic faith, which InfoWars is trying to intimate means that Biden wants everyone to become Muslim and to subscribe to Sharia law. Was actually, it turns out, the interview that they're linking to is simply Biden going, I think it would be really quite useful if people knew more about Islam. So once again, it's a case of taking something which seems quite benign and basically putting sinister music over the background. Although the other one, which I would have gone for, is self-help guru Tony Robbins promotes InfoWars report on COVID testing scandal. Do you remember Tony Robbins?
Oh yeah.
Endless infomercials back
Yeah.
in the
Is he? I assume he's still kicking. Is he? He's still doing his thing.
Yeah, apparently he's still being a very successful life coach, but like many influencers in the modern age, he's become a bit of a skeptic of the old thing called science, and is now basically sharing a whole bunch of conspiracy theories via his Twitter profile about how maybe COVID-19 isn't quite what it stands up to be, basically pointing to errors in the testing mechanism to suggest that there's something untoward going on with the official narrative about COVID-19.
Well, there you go. We look at InfoWars and DavidIcke.com so you don't have to, and frankly I wouldn't recommend that you do, mostly because it just wasn't, I did not find that particularly illuminating. It's just all anti-COVID, it's all a government scam and also 5G.
Also, a frustrating number of articles aren't actually articles at all, they're links to videos.
Yes.
I don't have time to watch videos.
No, the whole pivot to video thing's still going on, I guess, so...
Even though we now know the pivot to video was actually disastrous.
It was. In fact, it was almost conspiratorial in its own like, with Facebook knowingly inflating figures and so on. But we've talked about that in the past.
We have indeed. The things we haven't talked about in the past is our exciting Patreon material coming up just after the break being when we end this episode and start recording the next one, because we have got some juicy stories for our patrons who are the best people on earth. We've got an exciting story about a police union boss who has a QAnon mug in an office he claims is not his own. We've got theories about Russia wanting to steal COVID-19 vaccines. We've got a COVID-19 BMW stuck in an Adelaide airport car park all the way over in Australia. The curious case of Twitter banning QAnon. A music video that's designed to annoy QAnon at the very moment in time their accounts are being banned from social media. The curious case of Trump and wishing Ghislaine Maxwell well after the arrest, and then a new story by Josh put in just this evening, sabotage questions after Chinese activists killed in fiery Tokoroa crash.
Yes, just breaking news. If you're interested in hearing about any of that and you happen to be one of our patrons, then good news. Just listen to the next patron bonus episode. If you'd like to hear about that and you're not currently a patron, you certainly are quite welcome to become one by going to patreon.com and searching for the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy. I think it is safe to say that we're done with this episode. Is it safe to say that?
Indeed. I think we can say the episode is now closed. Our exploration of David Icke and Alex Jones's mental states via their websites is over and done with. I think it might be time to draw this episode to its rightful conclusion.
And of course the rightful conclusion of any episode is me saying goodbye.
And me saying toodly pop.
Precisely.
You've been listening to the Podcaster's Guide to the Conspiracy, starring Josh Addison and Dr. M.R.X. Denton, which is written, researched, recorded and produced by Josh and M. You can support the podcast by becoming a patron via its Podbean or Patreon campaigns. And if you need to get in contact with either Josh or M, you can email them at podcastconspiracy@gmail.com or check their Twitter accounts, monkeyfluids and conspiracism. And remember, they're coming to get you, Barbara.